All right, welcome everyone to No Guts, No Glory Live. I am your host, Patty Zor, and joining me today is former NFL pro, speaker, performance coach, and soon to be author, Jimmy Farris. Welcome, Jimmy, to No Guts, No Glory Live.
Thank you, Patty. So good to be back on with you. I feel like it's only been maybe a couple months, but it feels like, 2020 was like 3 years in 1 year for everybody. So it feels like it's been like maybe a year since we've been on together, but so happy to be back with you.
Yes, and you were my very first guest. So
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
It has been just a couple months, but yeah, it was a weird year. Felt like it went fast and slow at the same time. So, and we'll get into that more in just a little bit. Before we get started, I'd like to encourage everyone to please start a watch party so we can get this message out to everyone who needs to hear it. My teammate Casey is in the comments, so please, if you have any questions, she will be sending them our way. And I really wanted to bring Jimmy on today because I felt like we could all really benefit from his pro wisdom and coaching. As we were just talking, it's been kind of a weird year. It feels like 2020 was canceled. This time last year, we had all of these plans, what we were going to do, maybe from a business perspective, perhaps personally, and things didn't go as planned, right? We told we were going to be on lockdown. We were told it was going to be for 2 weeks, and here we are, right? We're still here. And 2020 might be somewhat of this, or 2021 might be somewhat the same as 2020. And so, Jimmy, I was hoping that you could help coach us today and kind of help to guide us. How can we prepare for the unexpected, or can you really prepare for the unexpected? We practice, we make plans, we set goals, we put the work in, and then boom, life changed, right?
Yeah.
Help us. What do we do? How do we get over this frustration or stress or anxiety we might be feeling?
Yeah. So I love this question. One of the first things, just kind of from a mindset standpoint, is to really identify it for what it is, so to speak. And what I mean by that is, sometimes we have the notion to react to things, right, instead of respond. And so we react in a way that will make the issue or the problem bigger or worse than it is, right? And certainly 2020, with the initial lockdowns and everything, none of us knew what to expect. None of us knew what that was going to look like. For some people, it was devastating, right? And I think collectively, all of our hearts go out to people that were really affected by that. For other people, it didn't change their business or their business model or their income or their revenue in their business that much, and so they were kind of able to continue on as it was. So whatever the situation is for you, I think it's important to identify it for what it is and not make it worse than it is, because when we do that, we just get in this kind of negative spiral about all the bad things that are happening. What you can do, though, from a preparation standpoint, which is one of the things I love to talk about, that's the first P in pro, the first pillar in be a pro, is to be prepared. And no, you can't necessarily prepare for the unexpected, right? Because we don't know what all those things are going to be. But one of the things that my sports background taught me was to be prepared for worst case scenario, be prepared for everything in a sense. And I know that could be difficult to think, well, what is everything? But I'll give you a perfect example. One of my passions is boxing. I think some of you guys know that. And I train at a boxing gym with other professionals in amateur boxing, amateur boxers. And boxers they enter their training camp with a mentality that they're going to train for the absolute worst case scenario, a rugged 12-round dogfight, right? They're going to have to be able to fight all 3 minutes of all 12 rounds. And that's how they prepare. Now, if they go out there and get a first or second round knockout, so be it. But they don't ever take for granted that what they hope happens or what they see as the best case scenario is going to happen. They plan for, to perform well. They have high expectations that the best case scenario will happen for them, but they prepare for the worst case scenario. And I think a lot of us go into life or business and we're naturally optimistic people. We set high expectations for ourselves. I'm one of those people. I always expect that whatever the best case scenario is, that's what will happen for me. But within that, I also have committed myself to preparing for the worst case scenario. And so although we can't prepare specifically for a global pandemic or businesses to be forced by the government to shut down, we can prepare for what we would do if we got cash strapped, what we would do if our revenue got cut by 70 or 80%. How would we survive? As a household, what would we do if our income in this household got cut by 50, 60%, right? And you can start taking steps now, even though we're in the midst of the pandemic, we can always start preparing for the next similar situation. So imagine kind of what that worst case scenario would be and start taking steps to prepare yourself against that. If it never happens, great. But if it does, you're prepared.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, it's really sort of stepping back and almost having that 30,000-foot view of maybe what could happen. And that is really great advice, right? Even personally or in business, right? We should always prepare, for the what if, what if the business isn't there tomorrow? And yeah, like you said, for a lot of business owners, that really is what happened. And right, just nothing that they could prepare for. Some of the things I'm seeing some business owners do, and specifically at NGNG, was really servicing others during this time, right? Even through, our business, we had clients who were no longer able to continue doing business with us because their business had changed. They had lost clients, therefore it trickled down to us. And one of the things that I think that Amber Vilhauer did really well is she just started serving others. Yeah. She started live streaming, just doing what we're doing now, and just bringing on other people who had, knowledge and were able to coach us and kind of help get us through it. And it was just all about providing service. And I feel like, when you're in a bad place, when you feel like you've lost everything, right? The chips are down. Think about different ways that you might be able to serve others, because one, it feels really good, right? To help other people. Even if you're down, it still has to lift you up, right? It just feels good in your heart. It's fulfilling to do that.
Yeah, I think that's actually a way too that you can use to generate some of your own momentum, right? I listened to a speaker a year or so ago who was talking about, he got asked a question, what do you do? This guy was in sales, and he said, what do you do when you are just in a slump, right? You can't close a sale for anything. What do you do? And the guy said, go help somebody else close one, right? Wow. So if you're sitting in your office and, you're on the phone and it's just rejection, no. What can you do to get out of that slump? Go help somebody else close one, right? Because it does two things, to your point. You get some of those feel-good emotions, those feel-good endorphins from helping somebody else reach a goal or solve a problem that they're having. But along those same lines, you also create some of that momentum for yourself that you've been missing. And really, momentum is everything. We all know what it feels like to be kind of in flow. When things are going good, it's easy to be a front runner. When things are going good, you've got this positive attitude, you're on fire, you're in the zone, as they talk about in sports. But when you're cold as ice, and you're 0 for 10 from the field, or, you haven't gotten a sale in a month, sometimes it can be hard to kickstart that momentum on your own. So by going to help somebody else, you can get a little bit of that momentum going. And then the next thing you know, you're in a different state, you're in a different mindset, your emotions are different, and you start to get some of that momentum for yourself. And all of a sudden, next shot you shoot goes in, the next call you make, you get a sale, right? So you can, as they always say, you can get what you want by helping other people get what they want.
Yes, that's right. Man, I love that too. And think about that person that you're supporting. They're going to remember that. And I feel like if someone were to do that with me, I would be thinking, how can I give back to this person? How can I return the favor someday? Right. If it's just telling everyone about, their products and services they offer, or, I mean, gosh, just being able to return the help. I just love that so much. So I think this is a good time too to sort of talk about embracing change and having the guts to do something new or try something new, whether again it's a business perspective or personally. But that's hard because it's, we have to get out of our comfort zone, and a lot of times, it makes us feel really vulnerable. And so, any thoughts on how we can overcome some of those fears of feeling vulnerable?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you know, I always try to use perspective, right? To when I look at some of these things, and what I mean by that is, if you have a fear of stepping out into something new, which a lot of people do, because they start thinking about all of the things that could happen. If I leave this job and step into something new, or if I really put myself out there, being vulnerable, then I'm subjecting myself to different, forms of ridicule or criticism and
Yes.
those type of things. And so one of the things that I always try to do personally, and this is what I coach some of my clients around, is to just directly ask them, what's the worst thing that could happen? Again, kind of back to that point. What do you fear the most? Maybe not even as it pertains to this particular situation. What do you fear the most just in life? What's the worst thing that could happen? Is that going completely broke and losing everything and having to move back in with your parents, or, whatever that might be, right? What's your biggest fear? What's the worst thing that can happen? And once they identify that and they really feel that fear, and then you start asking them, okay, so what would happen if you showed some vulnerability and stepped up and took that next step? What would happen in that case? And they'll say, well, maybe I subject myself to a little bit of criticism. And in relation, from a perspective standpoint, that in relation to that biggest fear is really nothing, right? It's that concept of relativity. It's like, is $100 a lot of money? Well, compared to $1, yeah, it's a lot of money. Compared to $1 million, not at all, right? And so when you can use that idea of perspective to say, the thing I fear the most, the worst thing that could happen, what could happen to me if I step out and try something new or get out of my comfort zone is nowhere near that level, then you can put it in perspective. And I think it helps kind of gin up some of the courage to just go ahead and do it, because then you can get your mind around, okay, I might face a little bit of criticism. I might have to cut back here and there if I'm going to go start a new business, but I'm not going to lose my life, lose my career, lose my house, move back in with my parents, all of these different things that we might fear. And when you just put it into perspective, it makes taking those steps a lot easier.
Man, I love that. Right? What is the worst that could happen? And I think too, once we do it and we take that first step and we face our fears, most of the time, from my experience, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, the fear of rejection, or maybe even, dealing with haters. You ran for public office, you're a professional athlete, man, people can't wait to give you all kinds of negativity, right?
Absolutely.
How do you get over that? Because when you put yourself out there probably will be some naysayers out there, some criticism. What is the best way to prepare and just move on from the noise?
So I'm gonna make that two questions because I think it was important. How do you overcome rejection, that fear of rejection, right? Because that's what a lot of people deal with, particularly in their business. One of my old business partners used to say that people were addicted to the approval of others. He called it approval addiction. And he said, that's one of the most deadly addictions in the world, is the addiction to the approval of others. And the way that you overcome that is something called systematic desensitization. And that's a big word to say. You have to go do it, right? If you're a young professional that takes a job in sales and you've got a fear of rejection, the only way to overcome it is to face it over and over again on the phone to the point where it just doesn't bother you anymore, right? We all know what it means to be desensitized, right? You see something enough, or you experience it enough, and all of a sudden it doesn't affect you that much, right? The very first time you jump into a cold plunge of 50-degree water, it shocks you, right? You do that every day and you become desensitized to that initial shock and that feeling. And, just as an example. And so the only way to overcome fear of rejection is to face rejection so many times that it just really doesn't bother you anymore. And your mindset flips to, okay, cool, boom, hang up the phone. Who's next? The next one is going to be a yes, right? Systematic desensitization. As far as the hater situation goes, people say all kinds of things about this, make your haters your motivators and all these kind of little cliche slogans. The first thing that I always think about when it comes to quote unquote haters is, are they right? Is what they are saying true? And I think that, there's a level of awareness around that, because we've gotten to a place in society where anybody that disagrees with us is just a hater. Anybody that doesn't see it the way we see it is a hater. Anybody that doesn't think I'm amazing, anybody that comes up to me and says, Jimmy, you're not the best speaker, coach, trainer in the world, oh, they're just a hater. It's like, the first question I always ask myself is are they right? Is what they're saying true? And so I try to be objective about that and kind of, pull back to 30,000 feet, take my own biases out of the equation and say, do they have a point? Are they right? Is what they're saying true? And if it is, then, you go to work to make those changes and grow and get better and use that as feedback that can help you get better and push you further in the direction you want to go. And if what they're saying is not true, now you can start to implement some of the cliches, like, let that motivate you. And it does let you know that you're obviously making some noise, gaining some attraction. You're on the right path. If what you're doing is causing a stir, is causing people to hate on you, then it lets you know you're getting some traction and you're on the right path. And so if what they say is true, then accept that and use that to grow and get better. If what they're saying is not true, then just understand that their opinion or their criticism of you really doesn't affect you or what you're trying to do in any way, and that you've got a specific audience to serve and a specific mission to accomplish. And their comments, criticism, and feedback is really of no consequence.
A ton of value being dropped here today. This is amazing. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about, discipline, holding ourselves accountable. We're all working from home now. So, really we have to do a lot to hold ourselves accountable these days, because nobody's really watching, right? Nobody really knows what we're doing. And, staying consistent even is hard. And I think you've had to do that almost your whole life, just knowing a little bit about your story. So any tips for helping us stay disciplined, maybe avoiding some of those distractions, and really, like, we are the only people who can really hold ourselves accountable, right? You don't want your boss doing it for you or your clients doing it for you.
Yep. So we can take this one or two directions, right? On the surface, you've heard me say this before, discipline and consistency and those kind of things are really, really simple. And it comes down to not negotiating with yourself. In other words, if you've decided that you're going to do something, or you've got a job or a task that needs to be done, and you put it on the calendar or you say you're going to do it, that's the end of it, right? Your word has got to be bond, as they say, right? You have to keep your word to yourself. No negotiation, no saying, well, I said I was going to make 50 calls today. I don't really feel good. Let me make 25 and then I'll make 75 tomorrow, right? Stop all the negotiation. But the other thing is that I love to talk about on this is that this concept of not letting your feelings get in the way, right? A lot of people confuse motivation and discipline, right? And they're really two different things. Motivation is just an emotion. It's a feeling, right? We know what that feels like. You watch a movie, or you listen to a song, or you hear an inspiring speaker, or you just get excited about something and you're like, yes, I'm ready. And you feel good. You walk into the gym or you walk into your office. You're like, I'm ready to crank it today. And then you wake up 2 days later and that's the last thing you want to do, right? The last thing you want to do is go work out. I don't feel like it today. I don't feel like doing this today. And the reality is that if you have a job to do, if you've made a commitment, then it doesn't matter how you feel, unfortunately. I don't mean to be insensitive, but it doesn't matter how you feel. You have an obligation to show up and do what you committed yourself to do. I talk about that in the context of reliability. That's the R in Be a Pro, in pro, reliability, right? Do what you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do it to the best of your ability, right? That's the commitment that you've made to yourself and to others. So I'm sorry that you don't feel like doing it, but don't let your feelings get in the way, right? Because feelings are not going to get the job done. If we only got our work done and our job done on the days we felt like it, we'd be productive maybe one day out of the week, maybe, right? So to me, that's kind of the surface level of that. Like if you're just having a problem, doing what you said you were going to do or completing tasks, remove your feelings from it because nobody cares. It doesn't matter. I'd like to use that little phrase that you see on t-shirts sometimes that says F your feelings. I mean, at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter, man. Like you got a job to do, you got to do it and do it to the best of your ability. The higher level of that is if you're really, really struggling with, motivation and discipline and just, getting out of bed to go do this thing, it might be time to reevaluate why you're doing the things that you're doing. Like, in other words, let's go back to your why, because with a strong enough why, all of those things get significantly easier, right? I always speak to that when I was going for, my goals in my football career. People will say, man, you made so many sacrifices. And that's true. I did, right? I sacrificed a lot, most of my social life during my teenage years and college, made a lot of sacrifices. But at the time, I didn't look at it that way. I wouldn't have been doing anything different than getting in 2 or 3 workouts a day and getting to bed early and, missing holidays or times with my friend at the beach and things like that, because I absolutely loved what I was doing. My why was so powerful that you couldn't convince me that I could or should be doing anything else, right? I used to think these guys were crazy when, in the summer they would be out at the beach and I'm like, man, the season's 2 months away. What are you guys thinking? That was my thought process. And so if you're really struggling, with motivation and discipline around something that you're doing, it might be time to really evaluate why it is that you're doing what you're doing, and maybe think about taking a different course. What we talked about earlier, stepping out of your comfort zone and doing something different, starting another business, something that really does light you up, something that really will call you to be the best version of yourself and show up every day. So kind of 2 different ways to take it, but I think both are important to address.
So I'm going to just recap here for a moment. As we prepare for 2021, we're officially 2 weeks in. Today is day 14. Think about this time next year. What story do you want to tell about what happened in 2021? Based on what you told us today, Jimmy, some of the things we've learned is let's prepare for the worst case scenario. We don't really know what's going to happen. So let's go with it, lean into the change and prepare for the worst. We talked a little bit about serving others. When you're down in the slumps, right? How can you provide service to somebody else? How can you help or support somebody else? Getting over that fear of rejection, systematic desensitization. Oh my gosh, just go out and do it. Eventually, you'll just get used to it, right? It won't bother you as much as it used to. don't negotiate with yourself. I love that. And finally, reevaluate your why. If it's not working, why are you doing it?
Right.
This is a good opportunity for change, right? Why not make a change now? This is the time to do it. We don't really know what's going to happen, next year or next week even. There's all kinds of stuff happening in our environment. And so, Jimmy, I really want to thank you for teaching us how to be a pro, some real golden nuggets you served up to us today. And I just really appreciate you, and thank you so much for being here and taking the time to share your wisdom.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity so much. I miss you guys all over there at NGNG, and let's make sure we continue to connect into 2021 and keep it going, because I love this platform. I love what you're doing, and I love everything that your team and your company and the people within that group really stand for. Like it is so great because of you guys. And so I'm always honored to be on with you or be a part of anything you guys are doing. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And again, to our viewers, we thank you. Please start a watch party so we can spread the word. And everyone, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.